The sun was setting over the swampy canals of Palm Grove, Florida, casting a golden glow on the water as Trevor T-Bone Johnson pulled into his favorite spot to eat. Trevor wasn't a complicated man. His needs were simple, and his love for fast food was legendary in his small town. On this particular evening, after a long day fixing air conditioners in the sweltering Florida heat, Trevor treated himself to what he considered the pinnacle of culinary satisfaction: a Bigmac, fries, and an oversized soda. Trevor had been dreaming of this meal all day. He parked his battered pickup truck by the canal and opened his to-go bag, savoring the smell of the freshly prepared burger. The first bite was always the best, and Trevor was ready to indulge in his favorite ritual of eating dinner while watching the local wildlife lazily drift by in the water. He had barely unwrapped the burger when he noticed a ripple in the canal, followed by the unmistakable shadow of a large alligator. "Oh, it's just old Chompy," Trevor muttered to himself. Chompy, as the locals called him, was a resident gator who often lurked near the canal, scavenging for scraps. Trevor had seen the beast dozens of times and thought nothing of it. After all, this was Florida, and sharing your space with gators was just part of life. But Chompy had other plans that evening. As Trevor reached for a napkin, Chompy lunged out of the water with surprising speed, jaws snapping. In a flash, the gator snatched the Big Mac straight out of Trevor's hand, retreating into the canal with his prize. For a moment, Trevor sat there stunned, his hand still holding an empty burger wrapper. Then, the reality of what had just happened sank in. "No way," Trevor said, standing up and glaring at the gator. "You can't just take a man's dinner like that." Fueled by a mix of hunger, outrage, and pure Florida grit, Trevor sprang into action. He wasn't about to let a gator ruin his evening. Grabbing his oversized soda cup as his only weapon, Trevor marched toward the water's edge, determined to retrieve his stolen meal. Little did he know, his impulsive decision to confront Chompy would not only make him a local legend, but would also turn him into an unexpected viral sensation, cementing his place in the pantheon of outrageous Florida tales. Trevor stood at the edge of the canal, soda cup in hand, staring at the dark water where Chompy had disappeared with his Big Mac. Ripples spread out across the surface, taunting him. His stomach growled, reminding him that this wasn't just about principle, it was about survival. Well, dinner, at least. "You don't mess with a man's meal," Trevor muttered, rolling up the sleeves of his faded flannel shirt. "Not in Florida, not on my watch." The first attempt. Trevor waded into the shallow water, the cool mud squelching beneath his boots. He scanned the surface for any sign of Chompy. A flash of movement caught his eye, a slight ripple about 10 feet away. That had to be him. Without thinking twice, Trevor splashed forward, the soda cup raised like a makeshift weapon. "Give it back, you overgrown lizard!" Trevor shouted. Chompy surfaced briefly, his jaws clamped tightly around the soggy remnants of the Big Mac. He stared at Trevor with what could only be described as gator smugness, before disappearing again beneath the murky water. Trevor lunged toward him, splashing wildly, but the gator was too quick. The crowd of onlookers that had gathered near the canal began to grow, their laughter mixing with cheers of encouragement. "Get him, Trevor!" someone yelled. "This is better than cable," another added. An unlikely ally. Just as Trevor was contemplating his next move, a familiar voice called out, "What in tarnation are you doing, T-Bone?" Trevor turned to see Betty May, his elderly neighbor, approaching with her trusty broomstick in hand. Betty May was a local legend in her own right, known for her no-nonsense attitude and her uncanny ability to wrangle wildlife. She had once chased off a pack of raccoons that had invaded her porch with nothing more than a fly swatter and a can of bug spray. "Betty May, that gator stole my Big Mac," Trevor exclaimed, pointing at the water. Betty May squinted at the canal, then at Trevor. "You're telling me you jumped in after a gator over a burger?" Trevor nodded. "It's not just a burger, Betty May. It's the principle." With a sigh, Betty May rolled up her own sleeves. "Well, I ain't letting no gator get the better of one of my neighbors. Let's get your dinner back." The fight escalates. Armed with her broomstick and a bucket of chicken scraps she had grabbed from her porch, Betty May joined Trevor at the water's edge. Together, they devised a plan. Betty May would distract Chompy with the chicken, while Trevor would seize the opportunity to retrieve what was left of his Big Mac. Betty May tossed the first scrap into the water. "Here, Chompy, come and get it, you scaly thief." The bait worked. Chompy surfaced again, his beady eyes glinting in the fading light. He lunged for the chicken, momentarily loosening his grip on the burger. Trevor saw his chance. With a yell that could have rivaled a battle cry, Trevor dove toward Chompy, grabbing the burger out of the gator's jaws. For a split second, he felt victorious, until Chompy, apparently unamused, whipped his tail, knocking Trevor into the water. The crowd erupted into laughter and cheers. "You got it, Trevor! Now get out before he gets you!" someone shouted. The soggy spoils. Dripping wet and clutching the remains of the Bigmac, Trevor staggered out of the canal. Betty May helped him to his feet, shaking her head. "You're crazier than a swamp rat, T-Bone," she said, a faint smile playing on her lips. "But I'll give you this. You've got guts." Trevor held up the burger triumphantly. It was damp, muddy, and missing half its bun, but it was his. "Nobody takes my Big Mac," he declared, earning another round of applause from the onlookers. The viral moment. Unbeknownst to Trevor, one of the onlookers had been live streaming the entire escapade on social media. By the time he got back to his truck, the video was already gaining traction online. Comments poured in from around the world, ranging from admiration to disbelief. "Only in Florida. This man is a hero. Did he really fight a gator for a burger?" Trevor's phone started buzzing with calls and messages from friends and family. "T-Bone, you're famous!" one friend exclaimed. "The whole world's watching your gator fight." At first, Trevor was amused by the attention. But as the video racked up millions of views, he realized he had become an internet sensation overnight. News outlets began reaching out for interviews, and reporters showed up at his house, eager to hear the story straight from the man himself. The media circus. Trevor's newfound fame came with mixed emotions. While he enjoyed the attention and the free Big Macs that local fans began dropping off at his house, he also faced criticism from wildlife authorities, who issued a stern statement. Engaging with alligators in this manner is dangerous and strongly discouraged. Leave wildlife to the professionals. Trevor responded with his usual humor. If they wanted me to leave the gator alone, they should have told Chompy not to mess with my dinner. A gator wrangling legacy. Despite the controversy, Trevor embraced his status as a local legend. He began selling t-shirts that read, "Don't mess with my Big Mac, T-Bone Johnson," and donated a portion of the proceeds to a local wildlife conservation fund. Betty May, always the entrepreneur, started offering gator wrangling workshops at her farm, using Trevor's antics as a cautionary tale. Trevor also gained a deeper appreciation for Florida's wildlife. "Chompy and I might not see eye to eye, but I respect the guy," he joked during an interview. "We're both just trying to survive out here." Months after the infamous Big Mac incident, Trevor T-Bone Johnson sat on the front porch of his small Florida home, sipping sweet tea and scrolling through his phone. He chuckled as he watched a video compilation of people reenacting his gator fight for laughs. Though the initial chaos had died down, Trevor was still a local and now internet celebrity. What had started as an impulsive, hunger-fueled decision had become the most talked about moment in Palm Grove history. A legacy of laughs. The video of Trevor's battle with Chompy had reached millions worldwide, turning him into an unwitting symbol of Florida's wild and unpredictable charm. Late-night comedians mentioned him in their monologues. Memes circulated with captions like, "Florida man's mule, survival instincts." And people even dressed as Trevor for Halloween, complete with a soggy Big Mac and soda cup. Despite the laughs, Trevor had used his newfound fame to bring attention to Florida's wildlife. He partnered with local conservation groups to promote safe coexistence with animals like Chompy. "Don't fight gators, folks," he often said during interviews. "Unless they steal your food, then, well, you're on your own." Betty May had also gained her share of recognition. Her gator wrangling workshops became a local hit, drawing curious tourists and locals alike. "Trevor might have gotten the fame," she said with a grin, "but I'm the one who made sure he didn't lose a hand, or worse." Chompy's new life. Meanwhile, Chompy had become a local celebrity in his own right. After the incident, he was relocated to a nearby wildlife sanctuary, where visitors could see the infamous Burger Bandit in person. The sanctuary even sold souvenir plush gators holding tiny Bigmacs, with proceeds supporting their conservation efforts. A reflection on Florida life. As Trevor sat on his porch that day, a familiar sound caught his ear, the unmistakable splash of something large in the canal behind his house. He stood, peering through the trees. Sure enough, there was another gator, sunning itself on the bank. Trevor shook his head and laughed. "Not today, buddy," he muttered, raising his soda cup in a mock toast. He had learned his lesson, mostly. Looking forward. Trevor's life had returned to a new kind of normal, one filled with stories, laughter, and a touch of fame. While he knew he'd forever be remembered as the Florida man who fought a gator for a Big Mac, he didn't mind. After all, not everyone gets to be a legend in their own right. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Trevor leaned back in his chair, content. "Only in Florida," he said to himself, grinning. And that was just the way he liked it. Oh,